marketing has been one of my Achilles heels as a business owner.
Yeah.
Because so many orthodontists, and there are still orthodontists who are, further on in their career than me that are like, don't market. You don't need to worry about sales. People just come to you. It's okay.
If you build it, they will come.
And I think that type of practice is so of yesterday. And I think people in urban environments feel it more than ever. And it's coming. It's coming to the suburbs. It's coming to rural towns because these big corporations are not going to hold back on adopting something like this. And they're buying practices in rural towns, and the people in the towns don't even know.
Yep. So I liken this to kind of the .com, right? Mm-hmm. Where everybody was like, why do I need a website? I don't need a website. The phone book works just fine for me.
Yeah.
Right? So nobody had a website. And then, of course, now, today, everybody has a website. So we're in that same position in my industry where people are slow to adopt because they just don't understand the value, or they think that it's too difficult to integrate into what they're currently doing. So we have established these simple ways to integrate AI into your business, starting with database reactivation, and then using generative AI to handle the mundane tasks, the tasks that are very important, but just humans don't really want to do.
We're good.
Okay.
All right. Ready? Here's your edit spot.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Icebreaker question.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So, what is the weirdest or funniest experience you've had as an orthodontist?
Oh, man. It's when people want to tell me about their dating life or sexual endeavors and how their orthodontic appliances affect that.
Is this PG?
I don't know. That's why I'm like, it's mostly adults that are worried about how it will affect their dating life if they have either an expander or lingual braces on.
Like, okay, we won't push it any further.
Let's not push it any further.
Okay, we'll just assume that.
But they tell me this like in the clinic with other people in there, and I'm just like, okay, we're doing this.
All right. Dr. Bryn Cooper of Cooper Orthodontics,
yes,
here in Houston, Texas, multiple locations. You are a board-certified orthodontist.
Absolutely.
And you sit on the committee of conferences for the American Association of Orthodontics.
I do. After having held like regional positions and then other organizational positions, and then I still do my St. Louis University. I sit on their board because I love the school I went to.
All right.
Yeah.
Go
Billikens.
Go Billikens. Pelicans?
Billikens. It's a magical creature. I love talking about this, by the way.
Go.
It's a magical creature. And some people are like, it's kind of like a leprechaun. But it does not look like a leprechaun. But because St. Louis University is Catholic, they have this magical creature that's likened to a leprechaun that is white with blue accents. And we love our Billikens.
Okay. I'll keep that in the video. Tell me about AI, or tell me about your organization before AI. What are some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, so first of all, you have to understand that I am an early adopter, especially for an orthodontist. And that actually came from my grandfather. So he was a beta tester for 3M back in the day, clear brackets when they first came out in the late 70s, early 80s. And I got to watch him use these products for the first time and then talk about it and help that product evolve and get better over time and how the product would change. And so the discussion when I was, younger at the Thanksgiving table was very different than 5 years after that. And I got to see products evolve and change. So that gave me fuel in my career to say, I want to try stuff new because it's going to get better. And when I first opened my practice, there was really no AI 10 years ago. And so Invisalign was the first company in the orthodontic realm that was trying to build what we now call engines by having their expert orthodontists meet and talk about the protocols and mechanics needed to move the teeth in aligners efficiently. So then when they brought the product to other orthodontists that weren't as experienced, or later on general dentists, you can actually pick your AI engine based on the Invisalign expert that you've gone and heard and listened to and understand the mechanics of. Mm-hmm. And people were all scared of it and like, oh my gosh, people are going to be able to treat teeth without dentists and da 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 da. And it was.
When was this?
This was, oh gosh, 2014 to 2017. Yep. Yeah. And so Invisalign was really the first one in there, and I was like, in my mind, everyone was so scared. Oh my gosh, don't contribute to the engine. And I was sitting there going, it's gonna happen whether we contribute or not. Like, it doesn't matter whether I'm one of the orthodontists that contributes. This will happen.
True.
And so I felt like it was much better to be on the adoption side than it was to be on the I'm scared side. Yeah. But I got to see how that changed the mechanics and what was happening with the clear aligner world as I stayed in a more analog world with the braces and wires. So then what happened is there was AI coming out in arenas that weren't clinical, right? And when they aren't clinical, I'm not as much of an expert in that area.
You're talking about like the generative AIs, like ChatGPT and stuff like that.
Yeah, and even communication AI, right? Like in general.
Like automations?
Automations, people seeing computers pointing things out in photos and x-rays and then having the human check it. And so something came out in our world called dental monitoring, which we use here at our practice. And before this, anything that was an observation the patient had to come in person. I would look in the mouth, my assistant would look in the mouth, and I was constantly trying to train my clinicians, my assistants, how to see what I see, right? Yet they hadn't been to orthodontic school, they hadn't been to dental residency, they didn't have all the education I had, but I was trying to teach them how to see what I saw. And what happened with dental monitoring is that they had AI, and I was one of the doctors that helped train the AI for dental monitoring of like, this is something you should observe, and this should then trigger a notification for the doctor or the team to look at it and decide. And in the beginning, we sifted through so many messages of just have the doctor look at it, have the assistant look at it. The assistant doesn't know, bring it to the doctor. And it was this constant training of the protocol. And now we've seen, that was in 2019, and now we've seen, we're 2025, 6 years later, and I have so many things built in that weren't built in 6 years ago. And so it makes the patient experience smoother most of the time, because one of the easiest examples to understand is you have an aligner, you take photos from home, and the computer can tell if the teeth are sitting right next to the aligner, which means you're good and go to the next aligner. Or if there's an air gap in the aligner, if there's an air gap, that means the tooth hasn't moved into place. You need to stay in that aligner until those one or two teeth that are lagging behind the other ones catch up. And so that was my kind of, I guess, gateway drug into AI, was that I was using this tool to communicate with my patients. I saw how it benefited us. It made me the same doctor at 9 a.m. as 4 p.m. And I don't think doctors using AI can say that.
So then how did all of that experience kind of help you get into using generative AI and AI automation to really enhance your marketing?
You and I have known each other now about 5 years, right? So we would see each other. We would talk about this AI stuff because I was seeing it develop in my practice with dental monitoring and some of the other setups for custom 3D printed brackets and things like that. And then you were seeing it on the marketing side. Like, what were you seeing between 2017, 18, and now that was really changing your marketing? And you were telling me about this weekly, every other week?
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, so I've been doing this a long time, starting with, working with IBM Watson back in 2014 when I was working at Ogilvy. And I saw the writing on the wall, and I saw how cool the technology could be. And then a lot of the automation tools started coming out, right? The basic automations, which I'm now calling dumb automation, right? I mean, for lack of a better term, like the MailChimps of the world and the Constant Contacts, things that are sending out one-way messages.
Like just monthly newsletters
or
weekly
monthly newsletters, exactly. And they're very stale, and like it still requires, someone, the content is good, but it still requires someone to reply and respond to various messages. Today's like AI automation allows us to kind of integrate two-way communication into what we're doing, right? So rather than sending out stale drip campaigns, we're now able to send out messaging, whether that's through email or through Slack or through SMS or WhatsApp, any channel pretty much. We can have a conversation with someone using generative AI. That's the reason why I saw the writing on the wall. So like,
when did that start? Like, when did the two-way, when was there like a tool you knew of being an expert in marketing?
Yeah, so like there was nothing available to marketers prior to ChatGPT. And then when they created the Assistants Playground and they were allowing businesses to essentially API ChatGPT into what they're doing, that's when things started changing, and that's when businesses like Braive started figuring out how can we use this generative AI technology to bring better solutions from a marketing standpoint to our partners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, so you were talking about this as it was coming out, and I was like, this is so cool.
Yep.
I want this because I'm not an expert in marketing.
It wasn't a hard sell for you because you saw it.
Well, and I think that marketing has been one of my Achilles heels as a business owner.
Yeah.
Because so many orthodontists, and there are still orthodontists who are, further on in their career than me that are like, don't market. You don't need to worry about sales. People just come to you. It's okay.
If you build it, they will come.
And I think that type of practice is so of yesterday. And I think people in urban environments feel it more than ever. And it's coming. It's coming to the suburbs. It's coming to rural towns because these big corporations are not going to hold back on adopting something like this. And they're buying practices in rural towns, and the people in the towns don't even know.
Yep. So I liken this to kind of the .com, right? Mm-hmm. Where everybody was like, why do I need a website? I don't need a website. The phone book works just fine for me.
Yeah.
Right? So nobody had a website. And then, of course, now, today, everybody has a website. So we're in that same position in my industry where people are slow to adopt because they just don't understand the value, or they think that it's too difficult to integrate into what they're currently doing. So we have established these simple ways to integrate AI into your business, starting with database reactivation, and then using generative AI to handle the mundane tasks, the tasks that are very important, but just humans don't really want to do. And the hard part about what we're dealing with businesses is that they see it as too complicated in their own minds, or that their people are currently doing it and they're happy doing it, but they're really not happy doing it. And so,
or they're scared of just like a tool taking over their job. And one thing we've seen in my practice is it didn't replace what humans were doing. All it did was took what humans were doing on a small scale compared to what they should have been doing, and instead of replacing what they were doing, it's just doing it how many times they were supposed to be doing it. Like if you're supposed to follow up 12 times, we were probably following up 2 to 4 times as a small business. And so we still need that manual 2 to 4 times. Like everyone still has a job that was doing follow-up before we did AI.
It just kind of allows like your ortho guides, right, to focus on the higher value tasks, the things that are more important in your business, rather than having to worry about whether or not somebody is following up. And we haven't even talked about what we're currently doing. So that might be a great segue into kind of what we are talking about doing. So like, what are we doing with you, Bryn? What is Braive doing with Cooper Orthodontics?
Okay, well, let's start with what we have done, right? So we did the database reactivation. That's what we're calling it.
And database reactivation.
So there are leads that were more than 90 days old that I gave Josh and his team at Braive their cell phone numbers, and he had their emails, but we focused in on text message because we thought that was something we had never had. Like none of the orthodontic softwares allow us to do automated follow-up texting in a way that's two-way.
Yep.
And so we texted thousands of people who had come in to Cooper Orthodontics or made an appointment but never come in, and just said, hey, are you still interested in braces and orthodontics and aligners? And it started that conversation, and over the course, we did it over the course of about a month.
30 days,
Yeah. And we got 5% of people that would, like, some of these were 4 years old, 5 years. I was like, looking back at the charts, I was like, gosh dang, like, this person from 2019 pre-COVID wants to come in now?
Yep.
And it really did. They were like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about this in a while, but I'm ready and I have the information. Like, let's just have one more conversation. And they came in ready to go.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of database reactivation, right? It's like there's, in most businesses, especially, orthodontics, as well, like with smaller practices.
Yeah.
It's once you have someone come in or fill out a form, for example, or come in for their initial consultation, like they just ghost, and there's a simple 1 to 2, 3, maybe 4 follow-up messages from someone at the practice to try to bring them back in, but then they're simply ignored, right? Every business has that problem. Every business needs customers, and so they're doing something about it to get those customers in the door. But then once those customers don't turn into business, they're kind of forgotten, and that's where like database reactivation comes in, all of these inactive leads, these dormant leads, can be woken up by the thousands using AI and having a two-way conversation. Something that would take a team of humans hours, days, weeks to do. The AI can do it pretty much at real-time speed and bring those patients back to the practice or bring them back to whatever business we're talking about.
And then let's talk about, there was probably 2 to 4% that were like, I want to talk to a human. Why are you texting me? Like all the negative stuff. And you know what? That means 96+% weren't negative about it. And then, people who are really big into marketing and really big into making sure that they're promoting their business and they have attention, they're like, at least someone is saying something.
Yeah.
It's not no attention.
It's communication.
It's
right?
and
something
so
that people want.
Yeah. And so as long as you have that small percentage that are haters, quote unquote, take the haters. They're talking about you. That's attention. Don't hold back from doing something because you're scared of that 2 to 4%, right?
Yeah. So when did you realize that the AI automation was working?
Almost immediately, because we got extra exams. So our business is decently seasonal. Late summer is usually a really good season for us. We have another spike in March because of spring break, and then it kind of ebbs and flows. And we did the database reactivation in a fall month that normally is not an amazing month for orthodontists nationwide. And we had our best October ever in 9 years of being in business because of the database reactivation. And also it was great because it's a month that's normally lower for new patient phone calls. When they were ready, we were able to really get them in and go.
Yep. And I think one of the other interesting parts about like doing the database reactivation stuff is that it helps kind of clean up your CRM data, right? You know, when people say, I'm not interested, they're not interested and they're not going to come back. Or they say, I've already gotten, my treatment elsewhere, right?
There was some that were like, I've already finished my treatment at another place or whatever. Like, how in the world are you still contacting me? And we would hope that we could have gotten that answer sooner if we had actually done follow-up in the way that it's idealized.
Yep. So there's that concept of like, what can we do better? The learnings from running our program essentially allows you to say, okay, what can we do better from a practice re-engagement standpoint or for a patient re-engagement standpoint? Where are those gaps that we need to fill? Right. And that's kind of like, that's perfect. That's a great dovetail into kind of what we're doing now, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't want these things to happen anymore.
Right.
And
these leaky holes.
The leaky holes. We don't want that. We want to plug the leaky holes, and we now have technology that allows us to do that.
Yep.
And we don't have to rely necessarily on human-to-human interaction to do it.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what Josh and I are doing now is actually building out our suite of two-way AI communication.
We're calling them AI assistants.
AI assistants, and it's kind of fun. They get different names for different purposes. And so when someone doesn't show up, they go into one string of communication. When someone comes in and gets their plan, then they don't sign up that same day. They go into another string of communication, and then we're trying to build this whole ecosystem and looping so that until someone tells us to go away or sign up, they are getting communication from us. And as a small business, you've seen bigger businesses do this as your box is filled with spam and da-da-da-da. As a small business, being able to have a tool like this is really, really valuable.
Yeah, especially, and like you mentioned, like the inbox thing, and that's why we feel texting is a really good way, because there is that immediate like dopamine when you see like that red bubble come up on your phone. You have to get rid of that little red icon if you're using an iPhone, for example.
Hopefully, and
then you're going to read it, but then it also allows the patient or the consumer to respond at their leisure, right? In their time, when they want to. And it's still that two-way dialogue, because the AI is reading the messages, is understanding what the patient or the customer wants, and then is able to give them information back. So in the examples of what we're doing for you now with someone who's missed an appointment, for example, that happens to everybody, and time is money. And so there is a follow-up process that you have internally.
Correct.
That where where one of your assistants is designed to, should I say ortho guys?
Ortho guides, which in most orthodontic practices, they're called treatment coordinators.
Yeah, okay. So treatment coordinators, and one of your treatment coordinators, it has a process to follow up with that missed appointment, that person who missed their appointment, over a course of like a week. But then once it doesn't feel like a hot lead to the person, they feel less and less motivated
to actually make the phone call, because they don't want to hear no all day. They want to follow up on the ones that they think they have a chance with. And if they mentally have written the patient off as someone that they have a chance with, that's when they fall off following up with that person. And even though they have a checklist that I've given them, that they've agreed to, that we've talked about, that's supposed to be a 90-day follow-up, emotionally, that human emotion gets involved. And they kind of fall off.
People make mistakes.
The checklist.
People forget, and they get lazy, and they make mistakes. Right.
And AI doesn't care.
No.
You put it in the protocol, and the AI will follow that written protocol that you put in day 1, day 60, day 90, day 360.
It doesn't sleep. It doesn't eat. It doesn't ask for vacation. It doesn't get sick.
Added bonus for the people who work in my practice, I've actually gotten way less stressed out about making sure that someone's like on the text messages during lunch, or that is there somebody staying in the office during lunch, because I know that people are getting answers from our AI, at least basic ones. And so honestly, the phone is becoming the least reliable way at this point until we come up with our voice AI. To get an answer. To get an answer about your treatment or whatever is going on. And then I don't have, when I first opened 9-10 years ago, I was requiring my assistants to carry the office cell phone around till 7 p.m. Some of them did not like that. They wanted answering services and this and that. And I was like, you get to clock in. You get to clock in. Like, I'm not even not paying you. Like, just clock in, carry the cell phone around with you. Disastrous. Because other practices didn't make them do it. And now, 9 years in, I didn't change my standards. My standards are still the same for the amount of communication that I want for my patients, but because of the AI, I can loosen up on my people. And I think that gives them some freedom that they didn't have, and I still get to maintain my standards.
It allows your people to focus on hot leads, like closing, focusing on the patients, the patient experience, right? And really getting the successes, because the AI is doing the brunt of the work that nobody really wants to do, which is to hear no all day, or to have to answer questions all the time. If you can feed our AI the information that you want to communicate to your patients in an FAQ, then it'll answer those questions so that it's not wasting a person's time. And then if they're interested, that's when they'll pick up the phone and call and talk to somebody at the practice, and then that's when they convert.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So what does the future look like to you when it comes to your business and integrating AI overall into your business? What does the future look like?
Ooh, goodness. That's a good question. Well, okay. So, like, long term, I don't know if we'll get there before I retire, but I think in my lifetime we'll get there. I think there's going to be AI involved in how teeth are actually set up on computers, where the doctors really are just checking. Like, right now, I'm going in, I'm tweaking teeth, I'm saying this is what I want. And even though I'm saying I want my marginal ridges to match, the AI doesn't always get it set just right. So I'm either resetting the lines that the AI is reading to set it up, or if the lines are correct and then it still didn't work, I'm going in and actually tweaking the setup. And that is still taking a human. And my human assistants, some of them might enjoy some of that, but most of them, that's just not where their brain is. And so it ends up being a doctor task. And also, just making sure that what you said in the exam is what gets into the notes, is what goes into the whatever portal, and then actually manifests. And so having me on the front and the back, but not particularly in the middle, is a quality check. You had to say the difference between like my human assistants, right? Because, and it's crazy as it sounds, but we're going to start using that more often, because there will be AI assistants, there will be robots literally walking down the street, and so we're gonna have to talk about, like, oh no, my human assistant is doing this, my AI assistant is doing something else. I think that virtual assistants that are human are going to virtually go away, because I think AI assistants are going to take the place of virtual assistants, which means people, make yourself valuable to people. Don't say I can just sit at home and I don't have to do the hard stuff and I'll wander around and work for 3 hours a day and this is like great, since COVID I can do this. No, those jobs are going to go away. The way you make yourself valuable is you have a skill that a computer cannot do, and you become an amazing communicator. Yes, because you can never replace that. You can never replace just being in the same room, reading body language, using the correct words and tone. Become an expert in that, and you will always have a job. Yeah. Yeah. And so I see humans taking more of that. We have that clinical that I just said. I think that we're going to have so much AI built into helping people get repetitive questions answered.
Yeah.
And I also think in orthodontics, and that's of course where my mind goes, I think we could have some robotics that can do the bonding. Once you have, because we already have digital plans that are online that I'm checking. We already 3D print transfer trays and custom brackets and appliances. And the bonding system, there's only 2 types of bonding in orthodontics. And it's a series of steps. It's one series of steps for one type of bonding material and a second series of steps for a second bonding material. That's not hard, guys. Like, there will be a robot that can squirt out etch gel in the middle of a tooth eventually.
Yep.
And so that's why. But you know what that robot can't do? They can't make the patient comfortable.
True.
They can't make sure that patient has coffee or tea that day. They can't make sure the temperature is right in the room and get them a blanket. They can't make sure that the patient holds still. You're going to have a human there to coach the person, even if the procedure is much more predictable with a robot. And so I think it's so important to work on your customer service, your experience, your communication, because there will always be orthodontic assistants in the room with the robots, right? And the orthodontist won't be able to be at 5 chairs at once.
No.
So
Good advice.
Yeah. I think we're going there where we're going to have robotics built in with our AI, especially in my field, in the medical and dental field, that's not here right now. And I think there'll be something that happens that makes braces a lot less visible, like a lot smaller. We can get the same result with a stronger material that's smaller. So even if the best thing is braces on the front of the teeth, everything's going to get smaller.
Yeah.
Because the AI can take the mechanics and shrink it down. And because we have 3D printing, we can make it that much more accurate.
Very cool. Very cool.
So that's where I think we're going.
I think that's great. I think that's a good, I mean, and I would say to all that you said about robotics and AI, it's the word yet.
Yeah.
Has to be at the end of it. We're not there yet.
Yeah, I think it's coming.
I think it's coming too. So last question before we go. If other practices, right, or businesses wanted to get into AI or start using AI in their practices, like what is the best way for them to do that?
We'll reach out to Josh.
No. We're not plugging my business. But for, like, honestly, like what's the first step? Like where do you start? Like, you know, because most people use generative AI for content creation. They use it for, you know, posting on LinkedIn and stuff. But like where do you really want to start to see ROI in your business?
I think first of all, you have to understand it to an extent where you can see how to use it. So just get Perplexity.ai or ChatGPT on your phone and start plugging stuff into it. When you get asked a question you don't know, like something that has always been tough for me to put a finger on is like an exact persona of who I want to sell for. And Josh was like, we're just going to plug this into ChatGPT. I was like, what? We're plugging this into chat. Okay. And then I was like, no, tweak it. And then they would spit out a persona. And I'm like, no, tweak it this way. And then it would spit out a persona. It took 3 or 4 tweakings to be like, that's who I'm selling to. But once I read it, I was like, that's who I'm selling to. But instead of having to come up with the 16 bullet points myself, I was just able to say, that's not quite right. It needs to be tweaked this way. And that was immensely helpful. So just start with little stuff like that.
Get better at prompting, like understanding how to use the generative AI on your phone or on your desktop to start being able to create small, meaningful changes within your business to better understand your customers. Yeah. Right? To better understand your people in your business. Right? And then start integrating and implementing those changes.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Brandon Dawson says, the person who gets the best answers is the one that asks the best questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't like the answer, figure out how to tweak your question.
Yep. Very good. Very good.
And knowing how to ask those questions as we become more and more inundated with AI is going to be the key to you being great at it.
Dr. Bryn Cooper, everybody, if you are interested in getting orthodontic treatment, she's your go-to. CooperOrthodontics.com.
And we even do long distance treatments because we have the AI that you scan from home.
Very cool. I know. I need to get on that. I have to embrace it. All right, cool. Is that it?
Thanks for having me, Josh.
You're welcome, of course.